Morning, children. Last week we have studied about the hydrosphere, and the continuation of the lesson. The content of the lessons are the meaning of the hydrosphere, tides, formation and pattern, and ocean currents. Last week we have learnt about what is an hydrosphere, tides, the high tides, the low tides, and patterns, how the tides move on. And now in this class today we are going to learn about ocean currents. So very quickly let me revise what is an hydrosphere. Yes, children, do you remember? Hydrosphere is nothing but it is the combined mass of water found on the earth's surface. Okay. And the movement of the ocean water takes place in three different ways. They are waves, tides and the currents. The waves are the oscillatory movements in water manifested by an alternate rise and fall of the sea surface. These are mainly produced by the winds on the surface of ocean. Okay. And the tides are nothing but the rise and fall of seawater due to the gravitation force of the sun and the moon are called the tides. And the tides are of high tides and low tide. High tides, when the level of the seawater rises and water moves further up the shore, is called high tide, and they occur on the full moon day. And the low tides, the fall of seawater and its movement towards the sea, is called as low tide. They are vertical and they are also known as neap tides. Okay, children. Now let us know about ocean currents. Ocean currents are nothing but they are the masses of ocean water moving in the definite direction. Ocean currents are nothing but they are the masses of water moving in the definite direction. Okay. Ocean currents are large masses of surface water that circulate in regular patterns. These ocean currents, they circulate in the regular patterns, like the names of the ocean currents are the North Atlantic Drift, the Labrador currents, and so on. Okay, children. Then now the different categories of the ocean currents. The ocean currents are divided as warm currents, cold currents, surface currents, and deep water currents. Based on the temperature, ocean currents can be broadly divided into two categories. Based on the temperature, the ocean currents can be broadly divided into two categories. They are the warm currents and the cold currents. The warm currents and the cold currents. What are warm currents? Warm currents are nothing but they flow from the low latitude, that is 0 degree latitude equator, towards high latitudes in the temperate and subpolar zones. They bring brief warm water into the cold water areas. These warm currents bring warm water into the cold water areas. Okay, children, then what are warm currents? They are nothing but they are the currents which bring warm water into the cold water areas, and they flow from the low latitude, that is 0 degree latitude to equator. They flow from the 0 degree latitude to the equator towards the high latitudes in the temperate and subpolar zones. And what do they bring? They bring warm water into the cold water areas. Okay, children. Then what are cold currents? Cold currents are nothing but these currents have a lower surface temperature and they bring cold water into the warm water areas. These currents have a lower surface temperature. What type of temperature they have? They have a lower surface temperature and bring cold water into the warm water areas. These currents flow in the high latitudes from the polar regions, from north, that is 90 degrees north and south, towards the low latitudes. They move towards the low latitudes based on the regions, like the polar regions towards the solar low latitudes in the warm equator region. So these currents have a lower surface temperature and they bring cold water into the warm water areas. But whereas the warm currents which flow from the low latitudes in the tropical zones to the highlight, they bring warm water into the cold water areas. So they move vice versa, opposite direction. And based on their depth, the ocean currents can also be divided into two categories, that is the surface currents and the deep water currents. What are these surface currents? These currents constitute about 10% of all the water in the ocean currents. Surface currents are nothing but they move on the surface of the water. That is 10% of all the water in the ocean lie and the upper, that is 400 meters of the ocean. And the deep water currents, that is these currents make up the other 90% of the ocean water. These currents make up the other 90% of the ocean water. These waters move around the ocean basins due to the variations in the density and gravity. So, deep water sinks into the deep ocean basins at high latitudes when the temperatures are cold enough to cause the density to increase. The deep water currents are nothing but these waters move around the ocean basins due to variations in the density and gravity. Deep water sinks into the deep ocean basins at high latitudes where the temperatures are cold enough to cause the density to increase. So children, the categories of the ocean currents are warm currents, cold currents, surface currents and deep water currents. Okay. Moving forward, now let us know about the causes of ocean currents. Why are these ocean currents formed? Till now we have learned what are ocean currents and the different categories or the types of ocean currents. Now we will learn about causes of ocean currents. What are the causes, different causes of ocean currents? The first important cause of ocean currents is the level of salinity. The level of salinity, as you know, the ocean water is salty. The level of salinity is the first important cause of the ocean currents. The level of the salt and minerals present in the water depends on the quantity of the salt and the minerals present in the water. The higher the level of salinity of ocean water, the denser the currents are. See children, for example, the Mediterranean Sea is more saline as compared to the Atlantic Ocean, as the Atlantic water flows into the Mediterranean Sea surface. Okay, and the next cause of the ocean currents is temperature. Ocean water near the tropics and equator are warmer. The ocean water near the tropics and equator are warmer. That means warm ocean currents. Water in the temperate and polar regions is cold. So they are the cold ocean currents. Depending on the important cause of the ocean currents is the temperature. See, based on the temperature, see the oceans near the tropics and the equator are much warmer than the ocean water in the polar or the temperate zones. See children, the water near the tropics and the equator are warmer, so they bring warm ocean current, and the water in the temperate and polar regions is cooler, so they bring the cold ocean currents. So the next cause of the ocean currents is the Earth's rotation. It depends on the Earth's rotation, like the Coriolis force. The speed of the rotation of the Earth is maximum at the equator. So all moving bodies like the winds and the ocean currents move in a clockwise direction in the northern hemisphere and anti-clockwise direction in the southern hemisphere. Example, the Canary, the current and the Gulf Stream in the northern hemisphere and Peruvian in the and the west wind drift in the southern hemisphere. The next important cause of the ocean current is the winds, the planetary winds. The winds are nothing but they are classified as the trade winds, westerlies, and the monsoon winds. Monsoon winds are nothing but the seasonal winds, and the trade winds are the winds between the equator and the tropics, and the westerlies are the winds which blow in the temperate latitudes and result in a northeasterly flow of water in the northern hemisphere and opposite into the southern hemisphere. For example, the westerlies force the warm Gulf Stream to the western coast of Europe as the North Atlantic drift. Okay, children. Then the last important cause of the ocean current is the land. A landmass obstructs the flow of water of an ocean current and diverts its movement. For example, the Cape Sand Rope, the South Equatorial Current gets divided into two branches. It depends on the area also. That is the important cause of the ocean currents of land. So what are the important causes of the ocean currents? The first one is level of salinity. It depends on the content of the it depends on the salt content and the minerals, the level of salt and the minerals, and the temperature. The ocean water near the tropics and equator are warmer, that is warm ocean currents, and the water in temperate and polar regions is cool, that is cold ocean currents, and the Earth's rotation, that is the Coriolis force, and then the planetary winds. The planetary winds are again classified as the trade winds, the westerlies, and the monsoon winds. The trade winds blow between equator and tropic, but whereas the westerlies blow in the temperate latitude, and the westerlies force the warm Gulf Stream to the western coast of Europe as a North Atlantic drift. They cause the cold west wind drift to flow towards the equator as Peru current. Then the land mass, you can also say as land mass also. The land mass also obstructs the flow of ocean currents and diverts its movement. So these are the causes of ocean currents. Okay, children, moving forward, now let us know about the circulation pattern of ocean currents. There are two types of circulation pattern of ocean currents. The first one is the circulation pattern in the Atlantic Ocean. So the circulation pattern in the Atlantic Ocean, the ocean currents are influenced. The ocean currents are influenced by the prevailing winds and the Coriolis force, children. So the ocean currents are circulation pattern roughly corresponds to the Earth's atmospheric circulation pattern. The cold water of the Arctic and Antarctic circles move towards the warmer water in the tropics and equatorial regions, while the warm waters of the lower latitudes move towards the pole world. Children, whenever the explanation is done, after listening to the class, open your textbooks, try to read, because as we are there is no personal teaching between us, then you may miss few words. So open your textbooks, keep the textbooks while listening to the class also, and after listening to the class also, you just go through the lesson once. Okay, then the circulation pattern of the ocean currents in the Atlantic Ocean, they are with the different names like the North Atlantic Drift, the Gulf Stream, and the Labrador Current. The Gulf Stream is the important ocean current. Gulf Stream is an important ocean current. Gulf Stream influences the climate of the coast of North America from Florida in Newfoundland. Gulf Stream is a potential source of renewable power generation. Gulf Stream is the potential source of power generation. In the northern extension towards Europe, the North Atlantic Drift is powerful, warm and swift Atlantic Ocean that originates. The Gulf Stream is also as I said, it is also a powerful source of renewable power generation. So the North Atlantic Drift, it's a warm Atlantic Ocean current. Gulf Stream also is a warm Atlantic Ocean current. Same way, the North Atlantic Drift also is a warm Atlantic Ocean current which runs from the Grand Bank near Newfoundland in Western Europe. In fact, the warm Gulf Stream current is deflected towards the east under the influence of the westerlies. Okay, children. So, North Atlantic Drift is a warm current of the Atlantic Ocean, and the Gulf Stream also is the warm Atlantic current of the warm ocean current of the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, children. Then the Labrador current. The Labrador current is the cold current in the North Atlantic Ocean, which flows from the Arctic Ocean and south along the coast of Labrador and passes around Newfoundland, continuing south along the east coast of Nova Scotia. This is the name of a place. Okay, children. It meets the warm Gulf Stream and the Grand Banks southeast of Newfoundland, and again north of the other banks of North Carolina. Okay. In spring and early summer, this current transports icebergs from the glaciers and Greenland southwards into the transatlantic shipping lanes. Children, so the three types of currents in the Atlantic Ocean are the Gulf Stream, which is a warm current, the North Atlantic Drift, which is also a warm current, and the Labrador current, it is the cold current of the Atlantic Ocean. This North Atlantic drift, it runs from the Grand Bank near the Newfoundland in the Western Europe. You look into the map, children, as I have shown in the map also, in the textbook also it is given. So you can refer it how it moves. Then it runs from the Grand Bank near the Newfoundland to Western Europe, and it helps or it keeps the ports of the Europe free from ice even in winter, especially the Norway, because of the warm current. Labrador current, children, it is a cold current. You need to remember only this. Labrador is a cold current in the North Atlantic Ocean. It flows from the Arctic Ocean south along the coast of Labrador. It meets with the warm Gulf Stream, this combination of the Labrador current and the Gulf Stream produces heavy fogs, and richest fishing ground is created. Like the Gulf Stream, also Gulf Stream is a potential source of renewable power generation, whereas this Labrador current is a combination of the Labrador current and the Gulf Stream produces heavy fogs, and the richest fishing ground is created. Okay, children. Next, moving forward, let us learn about the circulation of the current in the Pacific Ocean. This circulation pattern in the Pacific Ocean is, they are divided as the Kuroshio current and the Oyashio current. The Kuroshio current and the Oyashio current. Kuroshio is a strong weather boundary current in the western North Pacific Ocean. Children, this Kuroshio current, it begins off the east coast of Taiwan and flows northeastwards past Japan, where it merges with the easterly drift of the North Pacific current. Okay, children, this is the current in the Pacific Ocean. The Kuroshio current, it is a warm current. So you need to remember it is a warm current in the Pacific Ocean. It is the most important warm water current of the North Pacific Ocean. The warm water of the Kuroshio current sustains the coral reefs of Japan. The warm water of the Kuroshio current sustains the coral reefs of the Japan. There is a concentration, children, there is a lot of concentration of uranium passing through the current every year. Uranium, children, it is a mineral. So there is a concentration of lot of uranium passing through the current every year. And the next important ocean current in the Pacific Ocean is the Oyashio current. Oyashio current, it is a cold current. It originates in the Arctic Ocean and flows into the Bering Strait and flows southwards. Children, this current has an important impact on the climate of the Russian Far East. It's a place, Russian Far East is a place. The water of the Oyashio currents forms the richest fishing ground. So you need to remember Oyashio current and Kuroshio currents of the Pacific Ocean. Kuroshio current, it is a warm current, and there is a lot of concentration of uranium in this. The Oyashio current is a cold current. Oyashio current form the richest fishing grounds. Okay, children. So just now I have explained to you about the two different circulation pattern of ocean currents which are in the Atlantic Ocean. And Atlantic Ocean, the names of the ocean currents are the Gulf Stream, which is a warm current, and the North Atlantic Drift also, which is a warm current, and the Labrador current, which is a cold current. And the circulation pattern in the Pacific Ocean are the Kuroshio current and the Oyashio current. Kuroshio, it's a warm current, and the Oyashio, it's a cold current. Oyashio currents, this ocean currents form the richest fishing grounds, but the Kuroshio currents is rich in the uranium. Okay. Now, when you see the map, the movement of the ocean currents, the warm currents and the cold currents are shown in two different colors. Warm currents are marked with red, and the cold currents are marked with the blue. Children, just you can have a look at it, and when the worksheets are sent to you, depending on that, you try to answer. When you answer the worksheets, then you will understand well the lesson. Okay. Then the last point to be learnt in this is the effects of ocean currents. Because of this ocean currents, there are different types of effects. So the first effect, it is on the climate. Climate is affected. In what way the climate is affected? The climate is affected with the temperature, with the rainfall, with the fogs, with the violent storms. You can understand what is how it is affecting the temperature. Temperature, there is a lot of variation in the winds and the currents. The warm equatorial currents tend to raise the temperature to the places when they flow. So the wherever there are the warm currents, there is a rise in the temperature. When there is a cold currents, there is a fall of the temperature. So the warm, for example, the warm Kuroshio keeps the ports of Alaskan coast ice free in winters. Okay, children. Then the warm or the cold ocean currents flowing near a coast, like for example the warm equatorial currents, tend to raise the temperature of the places where they flow, while the British Isles enjoy a mild climate on the ocean currents influencing the warm Atlantic drift. Warm Atlantic drift brings the warm weather, and it depends on the type of the current which it blows. As earlier we have learned, the Kuroshio currents and the Oyashios, the Gulf streams, and the all depending on the currents wherever they flow, they bring the change in the temperature. And not only that, there is a change in the rainfall also. So depending on the currents, they bring the rainfall to that particular regions. For example, the winds help in increasing the amount of precipitation. You know, children, what is this? How there is a precipitation helps to bring the rainfall. Yeah. Then, for example, the amount of the precipitation in the affected coastal areas, for example, the North Atlantic drift, the Kuroshio currents bring in the sufficient rainfall along the western coast of Europe and the eastern coast of Japan, respectively. Not only this, there is a change in the climate, like by affecting the fog. The dense fogs occurs when the warm and the cold currents meet. There is a dense fog when the warm and the cold currents meet. The air above the warm current is warm and acquires a lot of water vapor. Okay, children, similarly, the Newfoundland, where the warm Gulf Stream meets the cold Labrador current, creates a dense fog. And not only this, there is the violent storms also. Violent storms also flow the line of meeting of the cold and the warm currents. The hurricanes which occur off the coast of the United States follow the line when Gulf Stream mingles with the cold Labrador current. For example, the violent storms, which means the hurricanes which occur off the coast of the United States, follow the line where the Gulf Stream mingles with the cold Labrador current. The next effect of the ocean currents is the effect on the marine organisms. You know what are marine organisms? There are a lot of innumerable microscopic organisms which are called planktons. The fish feed on the planktons. Ocean currents move organic material off the coast, which is the food of the planktons. What are planktons? Are nothing but the small microscopic, small so the effect on the marine organisms like planktons, they are nothing but the small microscopic organisms present in the ocean. Children, not only this, there is an effect on the commerce also. Commerce is nothing but it's a trade, right? Now, when the moving of the influence of the warm currents, harbors are kept open in winter, facilitating trade throughout the year. They help the facilitating the trade throughout the year. Not only this, the ships following the direction of the currents sail faster. They speed hinders if they follow the opposite direction of the currents. The meeting of the warm and the cold currents cause dense fogs which are dangerous to the ships also while they are sailing. Not only this, children, the sailing vessels are aided or hindered by the directions of the currents. So there is a danger to the ships caused by the icebergs that flow in the cold currents. Due to fog, the ships are not able to locate them. Right? So the different effects of the ocean currents are the effect on the climate, effect on marine organisms, and effect on commerce. Okay, children. So today we have learnt about the different causes of ocean currents. That is the level of salinity, temperature, Earth's rotation, planetary winds in the land, and the circulation pattern of the ocean currents, like circulation of currents in the Atlantic Ocean, then circulation of current in the Pacific Ocean, and the last one, the effects of ocean currents, which affects the climate, effects on marine organisms, and effect on commerce. After this, notes will be sent to you, children, and then the worksheets will be sent to you. Depending on that, you try to note down the notes and answer your worksheets. Okay.